Hello, this is me in glasses. So, my eyes got tired, y'all, from that last book live. My eyes got tired. We're reading chapters 12 and 13 now. Loose ends. So, I'm Chrissy, and I'm going to be joined here by Michelle in a moment. Alright, let's see what Michelle thinks of my glasses.
Hi.
Hi.
So I just realized chapter 12 is 23 pages long. So if you get tired, give me a signal and I will jump in and help.
All right. Well, let me water up now. Jeez. All right. Stay hydrated, kids.
Right.
My gosh. All right. Well, I will be the Liz Parker of whatever I do, and I will read this chapter. So, this one's for you, Sherry. I'm dedicating this one to her. She's so awesome. All right. Truth. Well, and again, the link to the Bail Project is down below. It helps. The Bail Project helps those who can't afford to post bail, obviously, because apparently freedom is not free in this country. So you do have to pay quite a lot to post bail in a lot of cases. So that helps families who are very low income help post bail, especially for those who end up in jail and who are completely innocent. So it's really, really important, and it's an awesome charity. So, okay, I got my glasses on. You got a hat on, which is awesome. So I think we are ready to roll. I'm saying Sherry wrong.
Sherry.
Sherry.
It's that New Orleans thing that's getting you.
I guess. Can we just blame it on the New Orleans accent?
That's what I was going to go for that. Sherry.
Sherry or Sherry? Sure. Okay.
Sherry.
Tell me. Sherry.
Right, Jody Lynn? Now I'm confused if I've got it right.
Now I'm very confused. Sherry.
I've been saying Sherry for years.
Correct me because I have to say it correctly. I have to say my favorite name correctly. Okay. All right. I hope I'm saying it right. I hope I'm getting the hang of it. Please teach me. Michelle got it right. Sherry. Okay. All right. Chapter 12 for Sherry and all the fans. All right. Now then, Isabel thought, turning her attention to Joe Morton, whose dream replica still lingered motionlessly at the Crashdown's exit. A frozen ribbon of gray smoke hovered about the muzzle of his unpraised pistol. Your turn, she silently informed the gunman. If dreams were indeed the unconscious corridors connecting the minds of humanity, perhaps she could use Liz's nightmare as a conduit to Morton's own depraved dreamland. If nothing else, it was certainly worth a try. Run, she ordered Morton's petrified figure, jolting the fleeing gunman and his accomplice out of stasis. Gun in hand, looking back worriedly at the scene behind him, Morton dashed out of the diner and into the street, only a few paces behind the other man. Isabel followed right behind him. She chased them down the sunlit sidewalk of Roswell's main drag, past the UFO Museum, the Mexican Folk Art Museum, and the rest of the tourist traps that sustained the town's struggling economy. Strolling sightseers, many of them in town for the upcoming UFO festival, ducked out of the way in alarm as the armed criminals barreled through assorted clusters of pedestrians, pursued problems.
These words they get you on here.
This is not the first time I've read this word. Okay. Inexplicably, by a tall, blonde girl in blue jeans. Behind her, back where the Crashdown, brakes squealed and a police siren blared as Sheriff Valenti arrived too late to apprehend the gun-wielding strangers. Morton and his bearded accomplice got away in real life, Isabel knew, but not this time, she vowed, determined to track Morton all the way back to his own trigger-happy psyche. 2 blocks from the crime scene, Morton and the other man darted into a gloomy-looking side alley, which Isabel was almost positive didn't exist in the real town. She hesitated at the entrance of the alley, fearful of the unknown. Shadows, surprisingly dense and impenetrable for such a sunny afternoon, shrouded the alley in darkness, hiding what lay ahead from the clairvoyant alien teenager. She heard Morton's lumbering footsteps retreating down the alley, getting farther and farther away from her, and realized she had no choice. Chewing nervously on her lips, she braced herself mentally and plunged into the murky alley. It was like stepping into another world. The sun disappeared as the scene shifted abruptly from day to night. The temperature dropped 10 degrees or so, making Isabel shiver despite her blue turtleneck sweater. As her eyes adjusted to the dim light, she found herself jogging uneasily through a dirty, squalid alley that stretched between the soot-blackened walls of 2 anonymous concrete buildings. Obscene graffiti defaced the walls further, while the broken pavement was littered with discarded cigarette butts, beer cans, broken glass, and syringes. Greasy puddles, which Isabel took care to step around, reflected the slivers of harsh white light that escaped from broken windows a few stories above her. The alley stank of spoiled garbage, spilled booze, and urine. Rats scurried between dented metal trash cans and dumpsters, while all around her, Isabel heard raucous laughter, racing police sirens, and the loud honky-tonk music. Somehow I don't think we're in Roswell anymore, she thought nervously, feeling like a modern-day Dorothy who had just landed anywhere but Oz. She doubted, too, that she was still in Liz's dream, unless Liz Parker, honor student and founder of Roswell High's Future Scientists Club, was leading a double life straight out of a David Lynch movie. Where am I now? Isabel wondered uncomfortably. Do I really want to be here? Experiencing a failure of nerve, she paused and looked back the way she'd come. To her dismay, Roswell's safe, sun-drenched Main Street was nowhere to be seen, replaced by yet more of the grimy, disgusting alley, which now impossibly seemed to lead back only to more darkness, decay, and dumpsters. Overturned trash cans, their rotting contents spilling onto the greasy pavement, served as barricades, blocking her escape route. Enormous rats, the size of porcupines, patrolled the scattered refuge, their black eyes glittering malevolently.
Malevolently.
I'm trying, y'all. Whatever. They look vicious.
That's right.
I don't know. I'm scared of these enormous rats, y'all. I don't know. There was nowhere else to go but forward, she realized after Morton. Straining her ears, she thought she still heard his ponderous footsteps ahead of her, farther down the slummy alley, and started after him again. Guess I have to see this through to the end, she thought less than enthusiastically, gingerly making her way through the garbage, broken glass, and stagnant, shining puddles of grease. The alley had the kind of warped, irrational geography that only made sense in dreams. It twisted and turned without warning, leading Isabel through a confused, disorientated maze of broken pavement and dingy shadows. After several unnerving minutes of wandering through the maze, flinching every time a bottle rattled or a rat scurried somewhere nearby, she wasn't sure if she was still looking for Morton or just a way out of these fatigued back streets. She remembered the brief, idyllic moment she had recreated for Liz back at the Crashdown, and wished fervently that she'd have the good sense to stay there. You owe me, Max, she thought, scowling. Then, just when she pretty much convinced herself that this entire dream walk had been a dreadful mistake, she heard Morton snarling up ahead, not very far away. Holding her breath, she tiptoed up to the next curve in the alley and cautiously peeked around the corner. Trying hard not to touch anything, she gazed in alarm at the frightening drama unfolding before her eyes. Morton had cornered the other man, who was even larger than the beefy gunman, in what appeared to be a dead end. A flickering red neon sign, a neon light, shining over the back entrance of the building to the right, cast a crimson glow over the tense confrontation, which had the biker backed up against a graffiti-covered brick wall, looking scared to death. The red neon made the sweat on his face glisten like blood. Hold on, Joe, he pleaded, his Adam's apple bobbing like the dopey antenna the waitresses wore at the Crashdown. Don't do anything crazy, man. We're all on the same side, you know? Morton loomed in front of the other man, his florid face only inches from his accomplice's. The muzzle of his pistol pressed up beneath the biker's bearded chin. Shut up, he barked savagely. That was all your fault back at that stupid sci-fi grease pit. Isabel doubted that Liz or her parents would have appreciated Morton's sneering description from the family-owned diner. What the hell did you think you were doing? Going loco back there? I just wanted my money, the muscular biker stammered. I needed the money now, you know, to cover my expenses. He squirmed against the unyielding brick wall. I did my part. I hooked you up with that Air Force flyboy, the one with the expensive habits. Isabel guessed that was a reference to Lieutenant Ramirez, whom Morton apparently intended to bribe or blackmail. All I wanted was the money he promised me, that's all. Morton jabbed the bigger man with his gun, forcing his chin up. You would have got your money when your pilot buddy came through with the goods, he growled. Isabel frowned and dug her nails into her palms, frustrated by the gunman's overly cryptic references to whatever it was he wanted from Ramirez. But Morton was too busy ragging on the petrified biker to flesh out the details. But not right away. I'm still working on getting that pilot over a barrel. You can't rush this sort of thing. I need to give him more time to dig himself an even deeper hole. Get him good and ready to do what he's told. Or else. Yeah, right. That's smart, Joe. I see what you mean. The big bearded biker smiled weakly, trying to get Morton to put away his gun. He shrugged his ape-like shoulders in what he obviously hoped was an ingratiating manner. I don't even know what that means. Google that. I just wanted a little cash to tide me over until you were ready to reel him in, you know? So you almost blow the whole deal by blowing your top back at that Space Case diner? Morton snarled, outraged by the other man's stupidity. Listen, jerk, you're playing in the major leagues now. My bosses have been trying for years to get their hands on this merchandise, and the last thing I need is some hot-headed punk messing things up, just when I'm about to make the biggest score of my life. You got that, butthead? Hey, I didn't have to come to you with this deal, the bearded man reminded Morton defensively. He threw out his chest, attempting to show bravado. There are plenty of other people out there who pay good money for the dirt on that lieutenant. Morton nodded slowly, thinking it over. You're right about that, he said craftily, and the only thing I need less than a moronic screw-up like you is competition where Ramirez is concerned. He looked the biker over coldly. You're a security leak, mister, that needs plugging up. What? Comprehension heightened the panic in his bulging eyes. No, wait, Blam! The pistol flared, and Isabel didn't look away in time as the gunshot blew away the top of the biker's head, splattering the dingy brown bricks with an explosion of blood and brains. Shocked by both the sudden blast and the bloodshed, Isabel thrust her knuckles into her mouth to keep from screaming and alerting Morton over to her presence. She stared in numbing horror as the biker's body slid down slowly onto the pavement, leaving behind a gory trail on a crumbling brick wall. Isabel had seen more death and violence in the past 2 years than any decent 18-year-old alien princess should ever behold. She had been forced to kill him in self-defense, but she still felt her stomach churn queasily, and she had to look away for a minute to keep from throwing up. Okay, she concluded, nauseous. I'm well and truly in Morton's head now, since he's the only one who would know about this murder unless Liz Parker has a really gruesome imagination. With a grunt of satisfaction, Morton stepped back from the grisly remains of his victim, and to Isabel's relief, put his handgun away. That showed him, he congratulated himself smugly before kneeling to rummage through the dead man's pockets. Nobody shakes me down and gets away with it. He removed the biker's wallet, perhaps to make the killing look like a routine robbery, then kept searching until, grunting with satisfaction, he found a folded scrap of paper tucked in his victim's back pocket. Morton's name and phone number, Isabel speculated, or the lieutenant's? In any event, the meticulous killer set the scrap on fire with a lighted match, stomped the spent match beneath his boot, and scowled and spit on the ground by the dead man's body. With a callous shrug, he stuffed the other man's wallet into his own back pocket. So much for that loser, he muttered. Leaving the biker's corpse bleeding on the pavement, Morton wiped his hands on his jeans and adjusted his cap. Then he swaggered over to the rusty metal door beneath the red neon light. Watching from around the corner, Isabel saw now that the fluorescent crimson letters spelled out the name of a bar, Hangar 18. She gulped nervously. According to popular UFO lore, and confirmed by Michael after meeting with that old Air Force vet several months ago, Hangar 18 at the Roswell Army Airfield was where the authorities had originally stored the debris from the 47 crash, including briefly before Nasato rescued them from the inquisitive scalpels of the Army scientists, gestation pods holding the genetically engineered fetuses of Max Michael Testin herself. Why that name, she worried anxiously. Why here, in this creepy back alley in Morton's mind? Seemingly untroubled by the pseudo-historical implications of the name, Morton knocked arrogantly on the rusty door. Moments later, the door opened just a crack, spilling a jagged shard of bluish light into the alley. Isabel backed away from the light instinctively, but Morton wasn't looking in her direction. Instead, he held a short, muttered conversation with someone on the other side of the door, who opened the door farther and let Morton in. Isabel heard loud music and a harsh, strident laughter coming from within the building until the door slammed shut, leaving her alone in the alley with a dead body and way too many rats. She hesitated, uncertain what to do, where to go next. More than anything else, she wanted to wake up, which would send her back to the motel room with Max and Alex. Far from Morton's vile night world, but she also knew that she had not learned nearly enough yet about Morton's plot. What had the blackmailing gunman managed to extort out of Lieutenant Ramirez? She still had no idea. Talk about a dream walk on the wild side. As much as she longed to exit the sordid nightmare, she realized she had to see what lay behind the flickering neon sign reading Hangar 18. Giving the grotesque corpse a wide berth, she crept up to the forbidding metal door. The fluorescent lights sputtered and hummed, as though the glowing glass tubes were filled with angry hornets instead of ionized gas. Isabel summoned up all her courage and rapped upon the door timidly at first, then louder and more forcibly. Let me in, she thought feverishly. The sooner she got inside, the sooner she could escape back to the waking world. Open up! She heard bolts being slid back, and moments later the door opened a few inches. A sinister-looking guy with greasy black hair and bad skin leered at Isabel from the other side of a short length of chain that prevented the door from opening all the way. His leathery, mottled complexion hinted at too many years of drugs, booze, or both. Gaunt and emaciated, he wore a rumpled white tuxedo that hung slackly on his withered frame. Yes? He asked suspiciously, looking at Isabel as though she hardly belonged there. Here, she can't argue with that, she thought. Can you let me in? She asked, flashing an ingenious smile. I'm supposed to meet someone inside. Is that so? Skeptical eyes looked her over, lingering longer than she liked on her chest and legs. His frayed, dilapidated white suit was nearly worn through at the knees and elbows. How old are you? You got ID? Terrific, she thought acidly. I'm getting carted in a dream. In real life, of course, her actual driver's license was in her purse back at the motel. But it took only a moment's concentration to produce a reasonable facsimile in his dream world. She already knew what date to cite as her birth year. If truth be told, she had sometimes been known to adjust the date on her real driver's license using her powers. This was just a variation on the same trick. She handed the freshly generated ID to the man behind the door, who inspected it dubiously before returning the card to her. That'll do, I suppose, he declared, then scrutinized her again. A nasty grin revealed chipped yellow teeth. Now then, what's the password? Password? Isabel was stumped momentarily, then realized that the correct answer had to be lurking somewhere in the psychic framework of this dream. Maybe if she just left herself open to the vibrations, the password would seep from Morton's mind into her own. She glanced up at the flickering red glow of the Hangar 18 sign. 1947? She guessed, free associating. Try again, the yellow grin taunted her. Roswell? You're getting closer, he teased, the smirking tone making her innocent guesses sound dirty. Area 51? Closer. Isabel racked her brain for more UFO lore. The correct password was on the tip of her tongue. She knew it. What was that other code name for the government's top secret UFO research program? The one mentioned in all those crazy pamphlets and TV specials? Max would know this, she thought, frustrated and wishing that she spent more time prowling that goofy UFO museum back home. It was something extremely appropriate, something like Dreamland? Bingo. The greasy scarecrow cackled, undoing the chain, and the little lady was admission to our humble establishment. The door swung outward, and its revolting guardian stepped to one side. Come on in. Isabel gulped and inched over the threshold, part of her devoutly wishing that she had never hit on the right password. The dingy vestibule just past the door was dark and musty and smelled of cigarette smoke. She eased past the scuzzy doorman, contorting her body so as to avoid brushing against him. Was everything in Morton's dream smelly and disgusting? Isabel had to wonder how he managed to sleep nights. Unless this is just how he likes things, she thought, sickened and repulsed by the notion that anyone, even a cold-blooded killer like Joe Morton, could feel at home in a seedy environment like this. Step right up, miss, the doorman directed her, snickering at her obvious discomfort. Just through the curtain there. Isabel flinched, and her skin crawled as an overtly friendly hand patted her from behind. Hope you find what you're looking for. Anxious to get away from the doorman's foul breath and dirty chuckles, Isabel plowed blindly through a thick velvet curtain into the brightly, garishly lighted interior of an enormous casino. Isabel blinked in bewilderment, taken back by the shocking, surreal disparity between the dank, musty vestibule and the sprawling, jam-packed pleasure palace she had just rushed into. Flashing lights and candy-colored strips of neon outlined every angle and surface, while country western music boomed from above, almost but not quite drowning out the clatter of rolling dice. The whir of spinning roulette wheels, and the constant ka-ching of innumerable slot machines. Showgirls wearing nothing but string bikinis, high heels, and tall feathered headdresses promenaded throughout the crowd of jubilant high rollers, handing out free cigars and cocktails. Giant 50-foot television screens, mounted high above the gaming area, treated the paying customers to Titan-sized coverage of heavyweight boxing matches and high-stakes horse races. Drunken gamblers whooped it up, cheering every roll of the dice and spin of the roulette wheel. The overheated air smelled of cheap perfume, cigarettes, and spilled champagne. So this is Morton's idea of heaven? Isabel thought, aghast, her eyes and ears adjusting to the sheer sensory overload of the imaginary casino, which seemed 3 times larger on the inside than it did from outdoors. She couldn't believe that he was willing to blackmail and kill to attain such a towering vision of the good life. I'm not even from this planet, she thought, and I had better taste. Given the colossal scale of the casino, she briefly despaired of ever finding Morton again. Looking down the long red carpet in front of her, however, she realized that she needn't have worried. Morton was, naturally enough, the undisputed center of attention, the strutting star of his own vulgar Vegas spectacle, presiding over a mob of breathless admirers and hanger-ons at the biggest and snazziest of the roulette tables. He was even dressed for the part, having traded in the workaday clothes he'd worn on the day of the shooting for glitzier, more ostentatious attire. An ivory-colored 10-gallon hat perched on his head, above a fringed buckskin jacket that hung open to accommodate Morton's protruding gut. An enormous silver belt buckle, the size of showy brass door knocker, was studded with polished turquoise, as was the clasp of his bolo tie. A showy gold-plated watch glittered on one wrist, and he lit a grotesquely large cigar by setting a $100 bill on fire with a monogrammed silver lighter. Clinging to his arms on both sides, giggly, bleached blonde bimbos wearing rhinestone-studded dresses 2 sizes too small, oohed and awed appreciatively his extravagance. Isabel looked up to see that Morton's jolly face smirking in smug self-satisfaction now occupied every one of the 50-foot television screens towering above her. She couldn't believe her eyes. For this, Liz Parker was almost killed. Some of Isabel's apprehension faded as she found herself looking forward to the prospect of bringing Joe Morton down. We'll see what a big man you are once you're safely behind bars, she thought venomously, or maybe 6 feet under. Before heading in for a closer look, she took a second to consider her own costuming. While perfectly adequate for hiking through caves, the simple sweater and jeans combination she now wore seemed out of place amid the tacky glitz of the casino. Better switch to something less conspicuous, she decided, looking over the million patrons in Morton's idealized gambling mecca. A scantily clad showgirl, wearing only strategically placed sequins and feathers, walked by at that moment, and Isabel snorted huffily. Uh-huh, right, she thought, arching an elegant eyebrow. Like, that's going to happen. Unwillingly to go quite that far to blend in, she contented herself with transforming her comfortable hiking garb to a stylish black sequin dress and high heels. Rearranging Maui clothes in a dream is even easier than in real life, so it took next to no effort at all to spruce up her hair and makeup as well. Isabel checked her reflection in the polished silver casing of a nearby slot machine, nodded in approval, and marched confidently down the red carpet, casually joining the carefree crowd, watching Morton try his hand at the roulette wheel. Excuse me, she murmured, elbowing her way to the very edge of the gaming table, across from Morton. On closer inspection, she was surprised to see that the spinning wheel had been done up to resemble a flying saucer. Silver glitter sparkled like sawdust on the rotating disc, while a green paper-mache alien sat atop the hub of the wheel like the pilot of a cartoon spaceship. That looks nothing like Macedo, she thought with a frown, disturbed to find alien imagery creeping into Morton's fantasies once again. Looking around, she now observed that the entire casino had an extraterrestrial motif, not unlike the campy, kooky decor of the Crashdown Cafe. Model rocket ships and flying saucers hung from the ceiling. Painted ray guns and bug-eyed monsters decorated the sides of the slot machines, while many of the strolling showgirls now looked like extras from Barbella, complete with fishbowl helmets, pointed ears, or silver antennae, just like the waitresses at the Crashdown wore. Where did all this come from? Isabel wondered, somewhat baffled. Had she somehow missed all this sci-fi kitsch before, or had the casino just completely redecorated by some tremor in Morton's sleeping consciousness? In dreams, almost anything was possible, she recalled, but why did the slumbering Morton, immersed in his private fantasy land, still have aliens on the brain? I don't like this, Isabel thought, chewing on her newly painted lips. Where's this space-age symbolism coming from? The spinning roulette wheel slowed to a halt, causing the rolling ball, which was painted to resemble the planet Earth, to bounce from wedge to wedge before coming to rest in black 18. A roar of approval rose from the crowd of awestruck spectators as Morton chortled triumphantly and, gripping his cigar between his jaws, scooping up an appallingly large pile of bright plastic chips in his corner. Let's see how many pages I've got.
What page are you on? I got lost.
I'm on 140. I'm okay. 9 minutes.
Well, and I'm figuring, will we even read chapter 13, or should we stop and let Jess get in here so she can do some talking?
Yeah, maybe, because...
So if you want me to pick up, just give me the word.
Yeah, we'll stay in here for now. I mean, how long is chapter 13? Oh, it's not that long.
It's not very long. I just didn't know how long we have. I wanted to make sure Jess could do her recap.
I think we got on at like 8:07, 8:08, so we might have enough time.
Cool.
If you do it in if you can read it within 10 minutes, I think you'd be okay.
Challenge accepted.
Maybe. Yeah.
I'm like, oh, you probably still have 15 minutes left.
Around the 10. I don't know. Of course, Jess is telling us to go for chapter 13.
I know, she's so accommodating. She's like, keep reading.
All right. Continue. He magnanimously threw a handful of chips into the air and laughed as his adoring entourage scrambled madly after the flying chips, one of which landed directly in front of Isabel, who felt obliged to grab for it in order to avoid attracting attention. She snatched up the blue plastic disc, which bore a printed sticker reading $100, and smiled weakly across the table at Morton, trying to look appropriately avaricious.
I mean, why use that word? Let me just say.
I think some of these words are too big for kids who are supposedly reading.
This is not Dawson's Creek.
I don't even know these words. I'm 34 and I've never heard of some of these words. What the heck is this? Weird. Oh my god. This is a little too... Sometimes I think it's overly descriptive. It's just a little much. It's like, we don't need all that description. High schoolers don't care about that much description, okay?
I might have to Google what avaricious even means.
Yeah. I want to Google another word, actually, earlier in the chapter we read, because I'm just like, what is this?
We are expanding our vocabulary while reading these books, I guess.
All right. His gleaming carnivorous eyes made contact with hers, and Isabel had to repress a shudder. Do I know you? Morton asked, winking lecherously. Thankfully, the bimbos flanking Morton, unable to secure any of the flung $100 chips on their own, chose that moment to raise a fuss, pouting and complaining, and Morton had to look away from Isabel to appease them, eventually buying their smiles and sloppy kisses with a handful of chips for each of them. Help yourselves, ladies. My ship has definitely come in, or should I say my flying saucer. Ha. He took a deep puff on his cigar, and then reached for a crystal goblet sitting at one corner of the table. He raised the glass to his lips and scowled as he discovered it was empty. Ramirez, he shouted, snapping his fingers. The crowd of spectators and sycophants parted to reveal Lieutenant David Ramirez in full dress uniform, standing at attention only a few feet away. Isabel's eyes widened as she spotted a black leather attaché case resting upright on the red carpet next to Ramirez's black military boots. That has to be the case Max and Michael saw at Slaughter Canyon, she thought in excitement. The one with the unknown merchandise. Excuse me. Slowly and conspicuously, she started working her way around the circular table towards the lieutenant in the briefcase. She almost left her $100 chip behind, but at the last minute remembered to hang on to it. Excuse me. Give me some more whiskey, Morton bellowed at Ramirez as though he were a servant. The obnoxious gunman blew a mouthful of smoke into the lieutenant's face, then patted his own corpulent belly. And give me a roast beef sandwich while you're at it, with plenty of mayonnaise. Yes, sir, Ramirez saluted Morton smartly, then executed a crisp about face and started to march away, briefcase in hand. No, Isabel thought in dismay, afraid that the dream lieutenant would just depart with the case before she could get close enough to follow him. Turned out Morton wanted to keep an eye on the case, too. Hold on, he gruffly ordered the departing soldier. He pointed with the cigar at the floor by his feet. Leave that here with me. Ramirez obediently deposited the briefcase next to Morton before goose-stepping away to fetch the bullying killer's refreshments. Isabel took this as more evidence that, in the real world, Morton had some really prime dirt on the actual lieutenant. She was less interested, though, in what Morton had on Ramirez than in what was in the attaché case, which she slowly but surely drew nearer to. Was there any chance that she could snatch the case without Morton noticing? That seemed unlikely, but she was at loss for what else to try. What I really need, she realized, eyeing the mysterious case covetishly, is a good distraction. Good Lord, these words. Oh my God, that's him. That's the man who shot me. The shocked cry caught both Isabel and Morton by surprise. Spinning around, the dream-walking teenager was amazed to see Liz, with her original brown hair and all, staring in horror at the high-living gunman. Behind her, Carlsbad Cavern's underground gift shop now appeared to occupy one corner of the casino. At first, the dream Liz seemed to be clad in the same outfit she had worn to the caves that morning, before Isabel gave her a molecular makeover. But then Isabel blinked and rubbed her eyes as Liz's casual attire was suddenly replicated by her crashed-out waitress uniform, complete with a gaping, bloody hole just above the silver apron. There he is, Liz shouted, all concerned, pointing accusingly at Morton. That's him. His cigar drooping from his lower lip, Morton glowered at Liz, his good mood replaced by anger with pathological speed. Snarling, he shoved his flunkies and bimbos aside, then rushed into his buckskin jacket and drew out his pistol, which now looked as large as a bazooka. Fire erupted from the muzzle of the handgun, and a cascade of hot lead slammed into the displaced gift shop, blowing apart shelf after shelf of souvenir plates, mugs, ashtrays, and snow globes. Gamblers and showgirls ran for cover, shrieking in fear, but every shot missed Liz, who continued to point an accusing finger at the gun-wielding felon. Obviously, Isabel realized, cringing at the repeated blast from the oversized pistol, Morton's unconscious mind had finally made the connection between the brown-haired girl at the gift shop and the waitress he had shot at the crash down 2 years ago. This is just what Max was afraid of, she thought in dismay. Morton's figured out that Liz can expose him. As distressing as this development was, Morton's maniacal attempt to blow away the dream Liz left the crucial briefcase momentarily unguarded. Seizing the opportunity, Isabel pushed her way through what was left of Morton's entourage, tossing a peroxide blonde to one side, and grabbed onto the handle of the attache case. Without missing a step, she yanked the case from the carpet and ran like mad away from the roulette table. Got it, she thought triumphantly, but the theft had not gone unnoticed. Hey, what the? Morton exclaimed angrily. Forgetting Liz for the moment, he hollered and aimed his massive artillery at Isabel. Come back with that, you bitch. I can't believe they got swear words up in these books. Oh my
Well, if
gosh.
they're going to have onomatopoeia as a regular conversation word, then we've got to have a curse word.
That's not the first curse word. There's been like a few in here. All right, then. The pistol boomed and the slot machine exploded only a few inches away from Isabel, showering silver dollars in all directions. Isabel's heart missed a beat, and she dropped her $100 chip. She kept on running, trying to put as much of the casino as possible between her and Morton. The high heels slowed her down, so she kicked them off as she ran, preferring to sprint barefoot upon the syringy red carpet. She ducked to the right, down a corridor of clattering one-armed bandits, all of which seemed to feature spinning UFOs and oval-eyed ETs instead of lemons, jokers, and such. That's what my parents used to call slot machines. Bandits. That's funny. Okay. Morton chased behind her, firing his gun wildly. Bullets smashed into gamblers and gaming tables alike, turning the lavish casino into a scene of bloody pandemonium. Frightened screams filled Isabel's ears, yet bizarrely, no police officers or security guards made any attempt to stop the amok gunman from chasing an apparently unarmed high school girl through the crowded edifices. Sometimes dreams can be just too darn weird, she thought irritably. Fortunately, the alien teen wasn't nearly as defenseless as she looked, not as long as she still possessed her special powers. Halting long enough to spin around and look back the way she had come, she raised her open palm and concentrated. An entire row of slot machines, jolted by an unseen telekinetic force, toppled forward, blocking Morton's path. Then, to retard his progress even further, she concentrated again, transmuting the stretch of velvety red carpet into gooey black sludge instead. She watched with a smirk of satisfaction as Morton's expensive-looking snakeskin cowboy boots bogged down in the thick, vicious muck. What? He growled in frustration. Where did all this goddamn goo come from? And I haven't said the Lord's name in vain in a long time. Okay. Good, Isabel congratulated herself. That buys me a little time. Darting out of range of Morton's pistol, she hurriedly looked around for some place where she could inspect the stolen briefcase in privacy. Her gaze immediately fell upon the entrance to the ladies' room, which was identified as such by the silhouette of a space woman wearing a fishbowl helmet and Judy Jetson skirt. Perfect, she decided. The restroom was conveniently empty except for a coin-operated robot dispensing toiletries, so Isabel wasted no time throwing the briefcase down on the counter by the sinks and tugging at its lid. The case was locked, of course, but that was no problem. A single touch of her fingertip undid the lock, which came open with a click. Taking hold of the sides of the lid with both hands, she paused in hushed anticipation for only a single heartbeat. Okay, she thought gravely, let's see what the big deal is. She lifted the lid, and a blinding silver glare escaped from inside the case, forcing Isabel to blink and look away, her eyes watering. The unearthly glow faded after a moment, though, and she cautiously shifted her gaze back towards the case's exposed interior, eager to see what the initial burst of light had concealed. To her surprise, she saw that the bottom of the case had turned into a kind of window, through which she saw a gleaming silver saucer cruising through space towards a bright blue sphere that she quickly identified as the planet Earth. A frown twisted her lips as, mystified and disappointed, she tried to make sense of what she was seeing. This can't possibly be the literal contents of the case, she theorized in a rush, based on equally surreal experiences on other dream walks. More like some freaky symbolic metaphor. Before her bewildered round eyes, the spinning saucer entered Earth's atmosphere, glowing brightly red as some sort of protective aura shielded the alien spacecraft from the searing heat of entry. The saucer sped downward, approaching the surface of the planet at a precipitous angle. And Isabel gasped out loud as she swiftly guessed what she was witnessing. She recognized the blue skies and arid terrain of southeastern New Mexico only seconds before the shining saucer collided violently with the ground, throwing up a cloud of flying dust and debris. I knew it, she thought, her appalled eyes aflame with realization. It's the crash. A lump formed in her throat as she waited for the smoke and dust to settle, revealing all that was left of the space-faring vessel after it disintegrated on impact. Part of her didn't want to see the twisted wreckage and broken inhuman bodies, but she couldn't look away either. This was, after all, the same fateful accident that had stranded her and Max and the others on a planet where they could never truly fit in. Is this what the crash really looked like, she wondered, or just how Morden imagines it? There was no way to know for sure, but the inexplicable eyewitness coverage of the alien craft's earth-shaking demise stirred powerful emotions in Isabel, so that she was completely caught off guard when the door banged open and Joe Morden barged into the ladies' room, tracking sticky black tar onto the tile floor. There you are, he snarled, thrusting his immense gun at Isabel's face, while his free hand slammed the lid of the briefcase shut. Who the hell are you anyway? He demanded, standing so close to Isabel that she could see the tobacco stains on his teeth. He grabbed onto her arm and shook her roughly. Who are you working for? Heat radiated from the red-hot muzzle of Morden's firearm. The smoky smell of gunpowder, like 4th of July fireworks, filled her nostrils. She heard the gun cock ominously. Okay, she decided, enough is enough. Briefcase or no briefcase, I'm getting the heck out of here. Spill it, you witch! Morden barked at her, spraying saliva in her face. His beefy fingers dug painfully into her arm. Who are you, and how did you pull that stunt back there with the tar in the slots? Tell me, you thieving slut. In your dreams, Isabel replied. She spit directly into his fuming, beet-red face, and he pulled the trigger at the very split second that she woke up back at the motel room, the deafening boom of Morden's gun still ringing in her ears. She sat up in bed, shaking and soaked in sweat, provoking gasps from both Max and Alex, who hurried to her side instantly. Is, are you okay? They asked almost simultaneously. She nodded woozily, too breathless to speak right away. Tremors shook from her head to toe, and her own blood pounded in her ears, making her dizzy. Just give me a minute, she murmured finally. She struggled to readjust to reality. Exhaustion, both emotional and physical, washed over her body, which felt as though it had actually run for its life again across the length of the imaginary casino. Despite the air conditioning, the room felt unbearably hot and stuffy, so she peeled off her heavy sweater. That's a little better, she thought, although the short-sleeved silk blouse underneath felt soiled and sticky with sweat. Glancing at the clock radio by the bed, she was startled to see that less than 30 minutes had passed since she had first lowered her head onto the cheap motel pillow. Is that all? She marveled. It felt as if she'd been stalking Joe Morton for half the night. What happened? Max asked insistently, kneeling beside the bed next to her, his dark, serious eyes searching her face for clues as to what had transpired during her exploratory dream walk. What did you see? Isabel started to answer, and her mouth was as dry as the desert. Glass of water, please, she croaked pitifully, massaging her throat with maybe a couple drops of Tabasco in it. Jeez, even Tabasco with water in it? Wow. Sorry for the commentary, y'all. I'm just like amazed.
Love it.
Alex sprang at once to secure her tonic. I'm on it, he announced eagerly, while Max stayed to watch over Isabel, waiting tensely until Alex returned from the bathroom with a glass of clear water, faintly tinged with red. Isabel reached gratefully for the cup, but was startled when Alex reacted with shock and surprise. Isabel, he blurted, eyes wide with dismay, your arm! She followed her own horrified gaze to where 5 ugly purple bruises defaced the tone-white flesh of her upper arm, exactly where Joe Morton's brutal fingers had squeezed her arm so mercilessly. Oh, that, she said archly, regarding the telltale bruises with icy disdain. Nothing to worry about. Just a little souvenir from our friend with the gun. Not to mention anger management issues. Here, let me fix that, Max offered. His fingertips brushed over her arm, removing the bruises by healing the injured tissues beneath her skin. Thanks, Isabel murmured. She sipped the Tabasco-flavored tap water, which soothed her throat and helped steady her nerves. Slowly, haltingly, she told her brother and her sort of boyfriend everything that she had experienced while exploring Morton's memorably nasty dreamscape, while also trying to interpret the dream's occasionally surreal symbolism. She didn't understand everything she'd seen and felt in the dank alley and lurid casino, but a few things seemed obvious. Whatever he's got in that briefcase, she said with utter certainty, it has something to do with the crash. In her memory, the soaring UFO once again dived into the unforgiving earth as she started to choke up. Another gulp of cool water was required before she could deliver one more piece of bad news. And that's not all, Max, she said, swallowing hard, because she knew that her brother wasn't going to like what she was about to tell him. Morton knows. He knows about Liz.
Dun, dun, dun. Sorry, I felt like I had to do that. Woo! All right, to continue, so we have time for Jess. Or do you want to talk? Or do we pick?
Do we have enough time for the chapter?
It'll take me probably 6 minutes to get through this chapter.
I would say you can get through this chapter, and then we have to start probably another live with Jess, because it's pretty soon after that it would cut me off.
Okay.
So go for it and read now, because of course Jess is encouraging us to read.
Boy, we couldn't look more hungover, Maria thought, than we'd actually spent the last night drinking. Breakfast was the morning buffet at the Denny's next to the Days Inn, except for Liz, who was still recuperating in the motel room, and Max, whose turn it was to keep watch over Morton's temporary residence at the Motel 6. The rest of the vacationing teens were refueling with various combinations of coffee, orange juice, scrambled eggs, bacon, fruit, and breakfast pastries. An aspiring vegetarian with occasional lapses, Maria had eschewed animal products in favor of toast, cantaloupe, grapefruit, and a plate full of melon balls. But her healthier diet failed to spare her from the subdued and enervated atmosphere at the table. Worn out by all their intensive snooping the night before, nobody was talking much aside from Alex, who kept making sporadic attempts to get a smile or laugh out of Isabel, who still seemed to be recovering emotionally from her nocturnal trek through Joe Morton's psyche. So how was the food at the imaginary casino last night? Alex asked her with forced levity. He dipped a rather soggy piece of toast into some scarily homogeneous-looking scrambled eggs. Better than this, I hope. I don't know, Alex, she replied humorlessly. She stared distantly at her plate, absently soaking a chocolate donut in a pool of Tabasco sauce. I didn't eat anything. Oh, he said, obviously hoping to generate a bit more conversation momentum than that. An awkward silence followed, making Maria wince inside, until Alex adopted another tact. How are you doing, Iz? He asked solicitously, his guileless green eyes beseeching her to open up to him about whatever was troubling her. That clearly wasn't going to happen. I'm fine, Alex, really. A touch of exasperation entered her dull monotone, and Isabel got up from the circular wooden table at which they were all sitting. I'll be right back, she said, excusing herself as she headed for the ladies' room. Alex watched her depart with a stricken expression, and Maria decided to take advantage of Isabel's absence to offer her friend some much-needed advice. You're trying too hard, Alex, she informed him in a low voice, leaning over the table towards the wiry young man. Just give her a little space, okay, before you really piss her off. But I'm just trying to help, Alex protested. Frustration was written all over his adolescent face. I hate seeing her all broody and depressed like this. I know, Maria sympathized. This is none of her business, of course, but she just couldn't sit by while Alex let his good intentions lead him astray where his dream girl was concerned. She'd seen this vicious cycle play out before, and not just between Alex and Isabel. Person A won't leave person B alone, forcing B to withdraw just sometimes makes A redouble his or her effort to overcome B's defense, A, and so on. Look, she said compassionately, I don't pretend to understand all the intricacies of your relationship with Queen Amidala, but I do know that you can't force someone to be happy or to open up emotionally, and they'll just probably resent you if you try. Had she managed to get through to him? Maria wanted to think so. Maybe she couldn't cure Liz of her debilitating post-traumatic what's-it, but that didn't mean she couldn't still play a positive role in her friends' lives. She considered offering Alex a bracing whiff of rosemary or cypress, but then recalled that, along with every other guy she'd known, Alex probably considered aromatherapy irredeemably girly. Their loss, she thought, sighing inwardly. I guess you're right, Alex said gloomily after a couple of minutes. Obviously, leaving Isabel alone right now was the last thing he wanted to do, but he appeared to have taken Maria's advice seriously. He threw up his hands in frustration. It's just so hard, you know. Tell me about it, Maria said, considering the laconic alien rebel sitting next to her. Michael had maintained a discreet silence during her heartfelt romantic strategy sessions with Alex, sulkily attacking his bacon and eggs instead. Was that because he was simply disinterested in such mundane, mushy matters, she pondered, or was his own bizarre sister-lover relationship with Isabel sufficiently complicated that he had felt uncomfortable discussing her with Alex? Or maybe, she admitted herself, he's still ticked off at me for forcing him to come along on this fun-filled road trip in the first place. Between taking care of Liz and dodging Morton's every move, she and Michael had not had much time to talk since their carefree weekend excursion had turned into a film by Quentin Tarantino. She kept expecting Michael to say, "I told you so," and couldn't quite figure out why he hadn't done so yet, unless he'd be too busy dodging bullets, that is. So maybe I should take some of my own advice, she thought. Say, Michael, can I talk with you for a minute in private? His lean face immediately took on a wary expression, the universal male response to the prospect of a serious conversation with their significant other. Sure, I guess, he said dubiously. Where? Maria pointed to an empty booth at the back of the coffee shop. After apologizing to Alex for abandoning him, she and Michael transferred their plates and cups to the other table and settled in. Okay, Michael asked, once their relocation was complete, already sounding defensive. What's this all about? This isn't going to be easy, she thought, drowning a gulp of fresh orange juice as she gathered her thoughts. I want to apologize, she said finally. Michael blinked in surprise. Usually he was the one she expected to apologize. For what? For making you take a vacation when you didn't feel like it and then giving you a hard time about it not enjoying it yourself. She poked at melon balls with her forks as she tried to explain what she meant. It's just like I told Alex. You can't force someone to have a good time when they're worried about something else. You and Max and Isabel have a lot on your mind these days. It wasn't fair of me to twist your arm like that just because I wanted to pretend you and I were an ordinary couple for a weekend. She glanced out the window at the Motel 6 across the highway and rolled her eyes. And boy, did this little brainstorm of mine turn out to be a complete fiasco. No, Michael insisted. It was a good idea even if I was too stubborn to admit it. We were all stressed out and needing a break. He reached across the table to pat her hand clumsily, an almost astonishingly demonstrative gesture by Michael's standards. It's not your fault that Liz bumped into the shooter by accident. Yeah, but now look at her. Guilt stuck up on Maria and whacked her over the head. She's practically having a nervous breakdown, all because I wanted to get out of Roswell for a while. Overcome with emotion, she told Michael about everything he had missed while trailing Morton, about Liz's panic attacks and post-traumatic flashbacks. I'm really worried about her, Michael. I've never seen her like this. As edgy and guarded as he often was, Michael sometimes surprised her by revealing his true feelings. This was one of those moments. I know what you mean, he confided in her. Max is acting really strange too, and I don't know what's with him. He quickly brought her up to speed on all of Max's bizarre behavior, including the way he had almost lost control while spying on Morton last night in Slaughter Canyon. It's gotten so that I'm almost afraid to leave him alone, Michael said, for fear of what he might do without thinking. Maria suddenly wished that they had compared notes earlier. Oh my God, she gasped in realization. Her olive eyes lit up as she clutched her head with both hands. Don't you see what's happening? Max has got it too. The post-traumatic stress disorder. Michael looked confused. But Max wasn't shot. No, Maria admitted, still convinced that she had zeroed in on the truth, but he mind-melded with her right afterward while he was healing her. A vivid memory of Max crouched over Liz's perforated body flashed through Maria's mind. Liz told me all about it, about how they shared their memories and saw each other through the other's eyes. Even now the concept sent a shiver through Maria. Talk about romantic. Don't you get it? Max must have absorbed everything Liz felt when she was shot by Morton. That's why he's reacting this way too. Michael nodded thoughtfully. Yeah, that makes sense, sort of. She could practically see the wheels turning in his head as he digested her brilliant diagnosis. But how come Max is on this whole bloodthirsty vengeance kick while Liz has ended up afraid of her own shadow? Testosterone? Maria speculated. She shrugged her shoulders, not feeling obliged to fill in all the blanks at this particular theory. Alex said that post-traumatic, affects different people in different ways, depending on their backgrounds, personalities, etc. The point is, both of them having a delayed reaction to what happened at the crash town that day, which means neither of them is thinking straight. Michael concluded, sounding convinced at last. He hastily gulped down the dregs of his coffee, jammed one last piece of bacon into his mouth as he slid out of the booth at top speed. Sorry to dish you like this, but I gotta talk to Max right away. He pulled out his wallet and threw a 20 to cover his share of the check. Before running out, though, he paused long enough to give Maria an irresistible grin that made her feel like $1 million. Good thinking, babe, he said warmly. And don't beat yourself up about the whole vacation thing. Nobody's blaming you for anything. Good to hear, Maria thought, smiling to herself as she watched Michael hurry out of the coffee shop. Especially from Michael Guerin, of all people.
Good Michael and Maria.
Oh,
stuff.
Michael and Maria.
Oh.
All right, how much do we have in here before we have to start a new live?
Probably about 4 minutes, maybe less.
All right. So everybody, hopefully you'll come back and join us. We're going to restart, I believe, for Jess to come in and do a recap.
Yeah, that is the plan.
Nice. Chapter 14 is 4 pages. We are not reading chapter 14. Look at you, Jess. Look at you.
Oh, I think is that the one where it's Liz, like Liz's journal entry or something?
Not sure.
Yeah. I think she wants me to read it because it's Liz Parker's journal entry, which probably would take like 5 minutes.
You want to do that at the start of the next one? And then you guys can chat?
I think I'll do it at the start of the next one because I'm pretty sure it would cut us off. I'd be worried. I'd be like half looking at the screen, half looking at the page, you know, if I was to do it right now. So
cool.
But yes.
Well, we're so happy everyone joined. This is exciting. I saw some new names in there. Oh, welcome.
Me too. So as you all know, it's always saved on my page so you can watch later. We're also going to post these lives eventually in the Facebook group that we started for everyone who is getting into the Roswell books. So, or has already been into them, you know. Maybe you already knew about them for a while. I definitely
you're welcome.
not. Which makes me really curious when I go back home if I had any of the actual Roswell books and not just the Roswell High books, because I'm pretty sure I just had the Roswell High books.
Nice, Jess. So for those of you who maybe weren't here last time on the previous live, about an hour ago, Jess had a great idea to start a new Facebook page about the books. So it's called Something Really Long But Exciting, Roswell, and then an alien, and then what is it, Jess? Can you just post it in the comments?
I think it's just read, watch, repeat, basically. Roswell books, something like that.
Yeah, Roswell, read, watch, repeat. So we're all chatting in there, having a good time. So we hope you'll join us. And thank you so much, Jess, for creating that page.
Yeah, Facebook for the elderly. I forget about IG. You know, I've kind of wondered. I might put this as a poll in my stories if people want me to do a Facebook page for my page, just as an extra, you know, way of reaching out to people. I don't know. I have posted in the groups, like the main Roswell groups, about my page, but I know not everyone has Instagram, so you know, it might be interesting.
There it is, Jess posted it. I literally had never used Instagram ever. I was always a Facebook girl until you all were like, oh, we're on Instagram and Roswell virtual party. I'm like, what? And now I feel like I look at Instagram more than I use the bathroom in a day. So that's pretty good. Just the same.
Yeah. I kind of like Instagram better. I'm not on Facebook as much. I'm more on Twitter and Instagram the most now. I feel like Facebook was so 10 years ago. Or more than 10 years ago.
That is true. Jason does respond to us. I know, as I was reading the book earlier, it said Brendan liked your post. And so I was like, oh, Unreal Fair liked your post.
That's why we're on Instagram, because that's where the cast
I know. I got so distracted. At first I was like, oh my God, Brendan's in the room. But no, it was Brendan liked your post.
We have a minute and a half remaining. So,
really, Rachel, with 285 South in your name? You like Mahendra and Brendan? Love it.
Yes. I remember finding Rachel on Brendan and Mahendra's lives. That's how I found Rachel. So
I do remember seeing Rachel post on there as well. So cool.
Yeah. So
all right, well, I will pop out of here so that you can get Jess into the next one.
Yeah, so
everyone,
please,
thank you.
Join us, everybody, in about
see you next time.
2 minutes or so. And
is next time tomorrow? When is
next time? It is tomorrow.
Right. Bye.
And then we'll talk about next week tomorrow about our plans
Sounds good.
for that. Okay.
Well, yeah, we'll talk more, Jess. I'll type in the next one. I talked to Jess too. Bye.
Bye. Okay. So we are going to wrap this up. I'm probably going to, because Jess probably really wants me to,